Saving starts with Xfinity. Get a great price on Xfinity Internet. Plus, ask how to get an eligible 5G phone on us. And for a limited time, $300 back when you add Xfinity Mobile. Go to Xfinity.com/start saving. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Restrictions apply.
Since the fall of man, a war has raged between good and evil. Over the centuries, this war has distorted the truth. Now the truth is perceived as lies, and lies acknowledged as truth. To this day, the battle continues as we investigate and debate the truth behind the history and mystery of the universe. We are Paratruth Radio.
Many people aspire to be big in Hollywood. There's writers, directors, editors, cinematographers. But what happens when their dreams come true? Tonight we talk to a man that has actually had those dreams come true.
Now Paratruth presents The Promise with special guest Sean Paul Murphy.
What's going on, Parafans? Welcome to another episode of Paratruth Radio, right here on the Paratruth Radio Network. I am running solo tonight. Eric had some things going on, so he will not be here this week or next week. So I do have some things lined up for next week. But for today, I am running solo. We have a great guest coming on tonight. Sean Paul Murphy. He has wrote several movies from a Christian standpoint. He has also written a book called The Promise, or the Pros and Cons of Talking with God. So, without further ado, I'm going to go to the line with Sean Paul Murphy. All right, Sean, welcome to Paratruth Radio. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. Honored to have you on. It's been something that's been kind of on my mind because I did hear you on Tiger Girl for God with Jerry, who's actually on our network now, and loved hearing you speak. So I did want to give you a chance to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, about your work, and how you got started.
Well, I'm a screenwriter, and I'm an editor. Not a book editor, I'm a film editor, which is now, since we don't use film anymore, it's video.
Yeah.
And I write movies. I've been doing it for a while. I also work on, shows for like the Discovery Channel and TLC, and I've also recently had a book published, The Promise, or the Pros and Cons of Talking with God. And so it's been pretty good. I've done 14 produced feature films, and I've done a number of award-winning short films, and so I guess I could say I'm award-winning.
Yeah. Well, at least you can say that. There's probably many that cannot.
Yeah, not all awards are equal, though.
Well, I'm sure that's true too. But so, what kind of got you started shaping films from a Christian standpoint? I mean, there's plenty of people that come from the other standpoint, so it's kind of interesting to see somebody who is similar to Eric making his films towards more a somewhat Christian standpoint, because he kind of shoots for anybody to be guessing what his films are, because he's got one that's going to be coming out called The Revealed, about extraterrestrials, sort of, but he lets the viewer, determine for themselves. So
whether they're really demons trying.
Right. So
yeah. Well, I started off. Well, first off, I am a Christian, so I already knew the language.
Right.
And secondly, from the very beginning, many years ago, I've always incorporated some kind of religious or redemptive themes, even in most of the secular stuff. most of my secular scripts had some sort of redemptive theme, which a little rewriting could make it a Christian film.
Oh, okay.
But years ago, when my second script was sort of like a Left Behind story, a end times movie. Prior to Left Behind, I could have invented the genre, and it got some interest in Hollywood. It got me an agent looking around, and then I wrote another a horror movie with Christian themes, which also got me a lot of interest. Actually, someone at CAA wanted to pick it up, but they wanted to make changes. So I rejected CAA. Overall, probably my biggest career mistake. But the funny thing about it is that back then there was no Christian film genre. So I actually think it was better back then, because if any of these films I wrote had to compete in the mainstream marketplace, and people weren't trying to make Christian films. And the only reason the faith themes worked was because they were integral to the story. They weren't just tacked on. It isn't like we say, okay, one person has to be saved, they have to go through the whole sinner's prayer. And believe me, people tell me that you got a whole list of things that you're supposed to do. So these films, in a sense, I think would have been better. And one of those scripts was just recently optioned not too long ago again. So we'll see what happens. But in many ways, I think that was better to try to reach towards the mainstream. Not that I haven't enjoyed these other films, and I think I've avoided your question, but why I started writing them more recently is I had just released an independent film that I wrote called 21 Eyes, and it was very frustrating. It got really, it's got some really nice reviews. It played in a ton of film festivals. We got picked up by this distributor who totally, they did good box artwork. I'll give them that much. And they did give us some advance. But, which of course, anytime you get an advance, assume that's all the money you'll ever see.
Right, yeah.
If you do that, you'll never be disappointed. And, but, it would have sold it. I don't know how many copies we ended up. I never saw the documentation we sold, but it's sort of like it was such a ripoff. And I wanted to write something that I could market myself. So I wrote this script called I, John, which was kind of a return to my Christian themes.
Okay.
And as I wrote it, I wrote it with the plans to produce it myself and market it myself, getting to raise enough money to do radio in certain markets and market it around. So as I was trying to gauge what was acceptable in the marketplace, what people were doing, I ended up picking up every Christian film out there, films by like Rich Cristiano, and a lot of them were had the Downs brothers, or Kevin Downs and his brother, he produced them, and Kevin's in them, or David A.R. White, and somehow I ended up sending a script to David A.R. White. I approached Bobby Downs. He said, who was at that time, they were partners in a company called, I think, Signal Rock or Eagle Rock or something. Eagle Rock, sorry. And that turned out, they liked it. They really liked my script that I had written, which later won the $50,000 Kairos Prize. I didn't get to keep all 50,000. But Dave, very true to form, said, look, I really like this script. It's got a good sense of humor, which Christian writers don't generally have. And he said, but here's the thing. Kevin and I like to do movies that we can star in. And there was no roles for Kevin and David. So they said they wanted to do, this is the other thing they do, secular, Christian versions of secular films. And they said, we want to do a Christian Big Chill. Do you think you could write that? And I said, and they said they wanted it to be a comedy, so I brought along my friend Tim Radishak, who was very funny, with me to write that, and then we sort of stayed partners through a good part of our Pure Flix experience.
Okay. So,
did I take a breath at any time during that? I was so curious.
Didn't seem like it. Well, and have you noticed doing both sides, the secular and the Christian, where they edit it differently for the Christian side compared to the secular side?
You mean in editing or in the scripting?
In the editing.
Well, I'll tell you, there are like pure flicks. Like I've done some films, like the Revelation Road movies, where they release in Europe essentially entirely secular versions of the film.
Okay.
They cut Jesus out of them entirely.
Okay.
You know, and I tell them that's going to kill their brand one day if people find out that, you know, they make a big store of, you know, we want to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then they go and release entirely secular versions of these films. You know, and even Encounter 2, they told me there was a secular version of that, and I'm like, how can there be? It's about Jesus talking to people directly. You know? What, did you call him Buddha or something?
Right.
That was secular. But they apparently played up, there were some additional scenes of drug business that I never end up even seeing. I've never seen any of these secular versions of these films.
Okay. Yeah, it just seems like
hypocrisy.
Well, yeah, but what I was going to say is, you know, it and that kind of is my point. There's been a lot of controversy over people that do Christian films and try to sell them to big companies, and they end up editing them so much that it's not even the original film. I'm sure that happens with any film, but it seems to happen more so with a lot of the Christian films.
I don't think that's as true as it used to be.
Okay.
You know, like one of the reasons, like I told you that one script I wrote that was optioned again recently, I was nervous if I sold that, the one that CAA was interested in, that they may have toned down the Christianity a little bit. Because in many ways it's more Christian than my Christian film, but because in people's opinion who read it that it was a very exciting story, people were willing to look aside. But now, because if you look at who are releasing the big Christian films, it's sort of like, you know, what's it, Fox Faith and Sony, you know, their faith divisions, they're pretty much keeping the faith in the films as they're released in this country. But here's why, because they know that these films will have no crossover appeal.
Oh.
You know, so it's sort of like a Tyler Perry movie. They're making it for, or, you know, a horror movie. You know, they're not anticipating that, you know, my 94-year-old grandmother is going to go out and see whatever, you know, Paranormal Activity 4. She's not going to go out and see that. So they're not bothering to take her into account.
Right. And
I think that's true of these films. I don't think anyone's ever accused, like, the Kendricks or anyone of toning down their movies. And Pure Flix, they were trying to be... well, you know, they just released entirely secular versions, but not in the United States.
Right.
So, but that was their decision. It wasn't anyone else's decision.
Oh.
You know, so it isn't like they, you know, because they are their own distributors now, in particular. So I think now, but see, that's also the drawback. And one thing that, you know, I've been doing Christian films now, and I have another one hopefully that'll go in production very soon. And you got to ask yourself, why are we making these movies? I think that's a key. And are we, as Christians, making movies? Is it good that we are making? What I've seen, in my opinion, and you know, people may yell at me for this, is that we're creating our own ghetto. You know, because people don't expect our films to cross over. You know, studios are willing to make them at a certain budget level. They're willing to release them. You know, and if you can get the churches out to support it, you can make a lot of money. But by doing this, by concentrating our efforts in strictly in this genre, and Christian films now are a genre, are we abandoning the wider culture? And should we be, you know, it's like, are we making films for ourselves, or are we making films to be light to the world? And I think we're making films for ourselves, it seems to me. You know, they're all about, you know, a lot of them that go to the theaters are about the culture war. And, you know, obviously we're not trying to win it. We're just throwing red meat to our audience.
Right.
You know, it's not really about, you know, saving souls or influencing the culture. It's just, you know, rah-rah for us.
Yeah, well, and I'm an aspiring writer myself, and I think one of the biggest things I think is, one of my writer friends actually said, write for yourself, but publish for your readers. And
very wise advice.
It's one of those things that I've heard many writers say, oh, I don't make a lot of money off of it, which, that's not entirely true. There's plenty of writers that have made huge amounts of money with their books. But
obviously, look at the luxury I'm living in. Corner of my dining room. A lot of scripts have been written right in this corner.
Well, I designate my area myself for my writing, so I completely understand there. But I think it's very important that you write for yourself and to get the story out. And I'm sure a lot of people get lost in the fame of it if they do hit it big, whether they are coming from a Christian standpoint or any other standpoint. So I think you're hitting it on the head there, that so many people don't do it to get the message out. They do it to make money. And in my opinion, whether you're doing it for a Christian point of view or any other point of view, if you are trying to do it to get rich, then it's just another get rich scheme, in my opinion.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you ever checked out my blog, Sean Paul Murphyville.
Okay.
Blogspot.com. Just type in Sean Paul Murphyville, you'll find it. I do give a lot of writing tips, and one of the things I always say is you have to make it real to you. Mm-hmm. And particularly someone like me, most of the films I've written that were produced were commissioned films. And they're all going to be crap unless you make it real to yourself. Mm-hmm. You'll see. If you were to read my book, which was a memoir. Wait a second. Sorry. You won't believe it. I just happen to have a copy of my book right here. But if you were to read my book and then look at the movies, you'd see a lot of similarities to incidents, that from my life. And, it's sort of like, you're hired to write a film about an astronaut going to Mars. Mm-hmm. Now, you've never experienced that yourself. But there's, here's a guy who's going to leave his family. There's issues of loss and loneliness and things like that you may have experienced. Mm-hmm. And those are the things you've got really captured. Because in the end, there's emotional truth. And people can tell whether you're doing it or not, whether there is emotional truth.
Right.
Beyond action, beyond acting, beyond drama, beyond comedy. If it's not true to you, why are you even writing it? If you can't find a way to make it real to you, why do it?
Right. And if you can't, if you write it and you can't even read through it, how do you expect other people to enjoy it?
Exactly. Well, the good thing about writing commission scripts for companies that do on relatively low budget, they at least want the script short. So, they usually want a 90 to 100-page script. So those are easier to get through if you don't like it, the 120-page ones. Right. So there is some benefit to working on commission.
All right. Well, I did want to get a couple of the questions that Eric had given me to ask you as well. I'll get the one out and then we'll go to break here. One of the questions he had was, what was your first script that was successful?
Oh, that's really tough. It depends what you consider successful.
Oh, right.
My second script, The Mark, got me an agent who didn't handle writers, but he handled directors, and he liked the script, and he tried to package it with one of his directors. So although that film was never made, I would consider it successful. My third script, CAA was interested in. Like my fifth script, I got a really good agent, Stu Robinson, who subsequently died, Robinson Weintraub and Gross, who later merged his company and became Paradigm. Oh. And, I got a lot of great reads, and so I would consider that successful. I've written, so from the second script on, there's been some degree of success. Not always, but...
Well, yeah.
If people are reading it, if people are liking it, if people are recommending you, people are, if they read your script and say, hey, this isn't for me, but do you have any Christmas movies? or do you have any woman in jeopardy movies? Then it's a successful script.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, I've had, like, my writer friend that I was saying, I had her read it, and she loved the book because I am in the revision of doing the book, so I wanted other people's opinions on it. Because
do the book first, and it's going to be a movie.
Yeah. So, and she loved it. So, I mean, the only thing she had suggested to me is be a little more descriptive, which I had already, just reading through it, I'm like, I didn't give descriptions for people's appearances, where this is set, that sort of a thing. So it's kind of interesting to get other people's perspectives before you take that next leap.
Gauge all 5 senses.
Yeah.
We're on Paratruth, maybe 6 senses.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's so funny. We did this movie, Sarah's Choice, starring Rebecca St. James. And they decided, you know, Rebecca St. James has written a number of books, and they would decide they wanted to do a book of the movie after the movie had been released. And Tim, the other screenwriter, and I were invited to do the book by Rebecca St. James, her literary manager. And it was a decent paying job. But they gave us these examples, and I always called it the drops on the windshield, because, you know, they were like examples, chapters of clients of theirs who had, like, published books aimed at women, and it was sort of like all about the bag and all about the they were carrying and shoes they were, and how the raindrop was going down the window and the windshield wiper wiped it. And I think Tim and I were kind of at odds about how to write it. He's like, let's just keep it close to the script. And I was sort of like, oh, we got to write it like a woman's book. And trying to find the right style really handcuffed me, because you hear so much about style. Mm-hmm. But in the case of, like, my book, The Promise, or The Pros and Cons of Talking to God, available on Amazon, what I did was I just wrote it myself. And people really love the style of it. So now I know what style to write anything in the future is just write it in my own voice, because people seem to like it. Right. Rather than trying to emulate another voice, whether that means too descriptive, not descriptive enough. It'll depend on the thing. And I guess if I get to an editor and they tell me I'm writing, you know, when you get to the editing part of the book and they say, you know, more of this, less of that, I'll follow their instructions.
Right, yeah. I mean, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, you can read other people's stuff, but in the end, it's your style. You're gonna write it your style. Not, it shouldn't be somebody else's style, because then basically it's their book or their script.
Exactly.
So
exactly, you know, because what I wrote was a memoir, and I was warned by another one of my movie stars, Tracy Melchior, who wrote a book, Breaking the Perfect 10, about how she broke all 10 of the commandments. Oh. Her memoir. And she told me, and she gave me a very good piece of advice, because I'm very afraid that people are going to beat me up when they read my book, that I should not send it to anyone. I should not let anyone read it until it was published, because then you'll get their opinions, and then you'll be telling the story of your life through their opinion. Or their eyes. Right. She goes, just write it yourself and just be willing to take the angry phone calls. But I'm a coward.
All right, folks, I think we're going to take our first break here. You are listening to Paratruth Radio right here on the Paratruth Radio Network. I've been talking to Sean Paul Murphy about his illustrious career. We will be right back after Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Now, Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Killer whales are one of the most powerful predators of the sea. They feast on marine mammals such as seals, sea lions, and even whales, employing teeth that can be 4 inches long. They are even known to grab seals right off of the ice. However, did you know that killer whales, aka orcas, are actually not whales at all? According to animals.nationalgeographic.com, killer whales are actually killer dolphins. And they are by far the largest of the dolphin species.
This was Eric's Random Fact of the Day.
Buying a home can feel like navigating uncharted waters. Redfin agents can help. They'll answer your questions with honest advice so you know exactly what you're getting into. They'll also help you tour as many homes as you want and show you what it takes to make a winning offer. With a Redfin agent on your side, you can sail straight to your dream home. Local expertise from Redfin. That's real estate done right. Tour subject to property and agent availability. Virginia Office Falls Church, VA, 844-759-7732.
You might have noticed a change in your neighborhood lately. Yep, Sprint stores are now T-Mobile stores. Now that Sprint is T-Mobile, you get more coverage, value, and benefits than ever before. We've invested billions to bring our 5G from big cities to small towns across America. And great coverage is just the start. From high-speed mobile hotspot data to weekly deals and giveaways, our customers get tons of great benefits. Head to your new T-Mobile store to learn more.
Qualifying service and capable device required. Coverage not available in some areas. Some uses may require certain plan or features. See T-Mobile.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio. My name is Justin. I've been talking to Sean Paul Murphy about his career, and he also has a book out called The Promise. What's the rest of it? I apologize. Yeah.
Pros and cons of talking to God.
Right.
Readily available. Though why anyone would buy a book that has that picture of me on it, I have no idea. My wife would. It was the publisher's idea. It wasn't.
I was going to say, it was either that or something that wouldn't have even related to the book to begin with. So.
It was a part of another part of my body, and I thought that was less appropriate.
All right. Well, there was a couple other questions here that Eric had for you.
Please.
He asked, how long does it take you to write a script, and on average, what is the length of your scripts?
Well, the quickest professional script we did, Tim and I wrote the rough draft of Sarah's Choice in 2 weeks. Because we were given the assignment around Thanksgiving, and Hollywood closes down to 2 weeks before Christmas, and they needed a script to do casting. So we had the rough draft done in 2 weeks. Generally on my own, I would say I usually write a script in about a month. When I'm writing if I have the time, I usually write a script on my own about a month. When I'm working on assignment, I try to write a script that's around 90 to 100 pages usually. My other scripts, I try never to go over 122. I try to make it around between like 112 and 120. That prejudice is definitely true where they get a script in, they just skip to the end and see how many pages it is, and if it's too many pages, they don't read it. And I'm almost the same way. I read some people's scripts, and I do look at the end because, if someone gives you a script that's 175 pages long, it's no good because they're not paying attention to the rules, and, they didn't know what the story was. I heard the guy who wrote Quiz Show, Anastasio, say that, the script's 130 pages long. It's because they couldn't figure out what the story was. Oh.
So is that the number that they usually look for, like 130 is way too high, or what's the
Some
number?
people usually I think the high limit is 125.
Okay.
But now we send everything in files.
Okay.
So that's kind of tricky because you got the cover page, and that counts as a page.
Right.
Normally, if you sent a script, the cover page wasn't numbered.
Right.
So you could do 125, but now if you do 125, it's really, if you send someone a PDF, and everybody wants PDFs now, it's 126. Oh. So we're kind of screwed by the cover pages, by the PDF format, and you can't send something without a title page.
Right.
So I would never send anything out over 125. Unless for some reason it was a commission thing and they wanted it to be long.
Okay. The last question he had was, what would you say to someone who wants to make a career in writing scripts for film?
It's harder now than it used to be. I started really writing scripts in the 90s when I started really getting some success, actually a little earlier than that. I don't want to give away how old I am. But back then, there was a huge market for spec scripts, and that's where the money was. So lots of agents would read spec scripts. It was very easy to get an agent. For me to get an agent, all I had to do, if I sent out 30 queries, I could probably get an agent during the 90s. That's how easy it was. If you write a good query letter. And if you go to Sean Paul Murphyville, You can actually see the queries that got me my book published, the query that got me my first real agent. So I save everything, so I actually reproduce those. And I didn't have any credits when I got my first real agent, so it's easy to write a query letter now.
Right.
But it's harder when you don't have any credits. But I think it's more difficult now because, especially since the last writer's strike, basically agents now really only want established writers that are generating a great deal of income, mainly television writers, because for the agency, if you're got a contract with a show, you're like an ATM, you're giving them money every week.
Okay.
If you're a spec writer like I am, I may take 3 months before I give them a second script, and then that may not be good. They may not like that one, and so I'm not the cash register that someone is. And also, when I started out, there really weren't any managers. So now what agents expect is for people to get a manager first, and for the manager to do all the work, and then the agent comes along once you're already generating a great deal of income. Right. And I'm not really sold on the whole manager thing. So I've been having good enough luck. And, just recently talked to a guy that was handled by ICM. And when he was at ICM, he wrote some interesting scripts that were made and got other assignments. Even then, he was mainly making the connections, making the contacts, and approaching people and pitching people for the scripts. And then the agency would come in behind him. So I do think if you're somewhat professional, you can definitely get your script in with people, provided you're professional and you have a good query letter, and then we'll see. You can't get into the top tier companies. You can't get. I couldn't get Universal. I couldn't send it to Universal to read it. I mean, would not be able to necessarily send it to Pixar to read it.
Right.
But most of the other company, or Imagine, or a company like that, I don't know who's big now, would have been Relativity, but they're gone. But I could not get a script in there, but I can get in pretty much anything lower than that level, based on or letters, faxes. I don't live in Hollywood, and I don't approach people. I don't like to talk to people. People say you should call people. But I don't want to be judged by my conversation. I'm a writer. I want people to judge me by words on paper.
Right. And I could completely agree with that. And I'm the type of person that I just don't like talking on the phone, period. So I would not want to be the
Skype, though.
Yeah, well, for the show, it's a little different. But personal phone calls, I try and avoid them.
I'll tell you one thing, a mistake I think a lot of young filmmakers are making is, because of the cheap technology and how easy it is to make movies, people all feel they should go out and make their own movie. And it depends what you want out of life, but, so many people are doing it. The market is flooded with these low-budget films. If you really want to make films, I'm at the point now where, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I turn down assignments if I don't think people will see the movie. If I don't think they have a distributor, I don't think they have a big enough budget to attract known actors in it.
Right.
There's no point, because I don't want to make films that nobody sees.
Right.
It's not enough to go to, a bunch of film festivals. I've done that route. It's a lot of fun. But, you're never going to get the return. I mean, everybody, if you want to be a writer, and Eric wants to be a writer, I'm sure you'd like to do that for a living.
Right.
But if you're making films for $15,000 with your friends, you won't make films for a living, because those films will never be successful. They will never return enough money to warrant the time to do them. When you're young, that's great. But once you get married, you have kids, you have a house, you really need to make things that are going to generate the income. In the beginning, when I was in there, I was thinking, when I first was thinking about independent films, if the film returned the budget to the investor, that was hey, that's great. That is always my primary goal. I hate seeing stuff. But then you think about it, okay, the investor got his money back, but I've spent nearly a year working on this movie. writing it, producing it, editing it, doing, it's a lot of work. And then you're like, I would have made more money had I worked at McDonald's than making this movie. So a lot of people can't resist the urge to go out and make their first film. And that's my first produced film. But at least it was a union picture with known actors in it. But, I'd say, if your goal is to make movies for a living, try to do it the right way. Your career will be better served by making, a $70 million movie for Paramount, one of them, than 32, films for $15,000 a piece.
Right. Yeah.
So I would recommend that. And I tell people it's better to get no's from the right people. If you got no's from 20 of the top people in Hollywood and didn't make your film, you'll still be better off than if you made the film for $15,000 on yourself and nobody saw it. That's my opinion. Could be wrong.
So that leads me kind of to my next question. Everybody says it's all about who you know in this type of industry. Do you think that's true?
If you're making films on your own, yeah, it really is, because that's who you're going to try to get in it. But I never knew anybody. I just sent, I wrote scripts. I sent letters to people, and then people would read it. And those were the people I knew. Okay. And there are a couple of producers that come close to making films with that, are on like the top of the list, who've been very supportive of me. And one day we'll make a film together. There are a couple people like that. And I have a very detailed program of names and what they've read, what they're looking for, that I built up over years. It's my master list. So those are the people I know, and it helps me that I know people now. Like in particular, I know a very good casting director. So if I really needed to attach somebody, but what I really need now is somebody who knows Billy Idol, because I wrote a film that actually has Billy Idol as a character.
Oh, okay.
But I don't personally know anyone who knows Billy Idol, but I know if I got Billy Idol, I'd have to film made tomorrow. So if anyone out there knows Billy Idol, contact me. Right. I'll touch you in on a piece.
Well, we are heard all around the world, so I'm sure if somebody knows Billy Idol, they will try and get you in contact with them.
Yeah, get me in touch with Billy Idol for my script Lifelike, which I think is the best script I've written since the mid-90s.
That's good. So, out of all of your scripts, and especially ones that have become full-length features, what is your favorite or your couple of favorites?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because you never know a screenwriter who doesn't direct. I don't want to direct. Is never going to be completely happy, because nothing's ever as good as you imagined it.
Yeah.
But I would say the film that came closest to my vision was the first one, called 21 Eyes. Okay. Which is possibly going to be remade by Kim Thomas. And I would say that was the best of them. Closest to what I did, and I think it's a gas, and it was in 30 film festivals, maybe, I think. It was in a ton of them. And it was a lot of fun. Of the faith-based films, I would say that I think the most entertaining one is Hidden Secrets, which is the first of them, with John Schneider and Tracy Melchior. The one that has the most impact on people's lives, and you gotta love that, is The Encounter, which was the fifth film I made. Okay. Jesus in a Diner. I don't know if you've seen it. And it's really an amazing sleeper film. It was the lowest budgeted film I've ever done. That's not true. I did a documentary that had a lower budget. It was essentially pizzas, I think, with, on the set, meals when we went out to shoot. It was about the budget of that film. But other than that, The Encounter was the lowest budgeted film, and there was zero press for it when it came out. It was very disappointing, because I saw it at the premiere, and they had an altar call at this Boston Film Festival. 200 people in the theater came forward, first screening. And, then it was on Netflix, and people discovered it there, and it became a huge super hit. Until God's Not Dead came out, it was PureFlix's most profitable movie. So.
Yeah. Well, I had tried to look for several of your films to try and get some of them watched before the interview, and I couldn't find them anywhere unless I had to rent them or something. So,
do you have Netflix?
I do.
Well, here now, you'll know my pet peeve about the Christian film business.
Sure.
Okay, and I was recently invited to pitch for a provider who has a firewall.
Okay.
Here's the thing: everybody does this, oh, we're doing this to reach people for the Lord. Oh, we're spreading the gospel. Oh, we're spreading the gospel. That's our goal. That's what it's really all about. So what are they doing now? They are putting the content, they're making exclusive content and putting it behind firewalls. And not just PureFlix, other companies too. And behind a firewall, no one's ever going to be able to see it. A non-believer is not going to say, oh, I'm feeling down today. Hey, I should take out my credit card and subscribe to this Christian site, even though I'm not a Christian and have no interest in it. But I tell you what, on the encounter, when the film, that's why all of my films, as they're coming off of Netflix, for a while, everything I did was on Netflix except the last Black Rider film, which they didn't put on Netflix. And there people could discover it. People would say, and even a lot of them were on Christian television. I don't know if they've been on, but they'd be on like 4 or 5 different channels. And it's like, non-believers don't normally seek out those channels. But if you're flipping through and you see, mine comes up green if it's a movie, and I'm always interested in movies, you say, oh, here's a film starring Sting. I'm a wrestling fan, and here's a movie starring Sting. I'll watch that. There's a chance that non-believers will actually see the movies. And on Netflix, it ended, the encounter hit a lot of categories like mystery, it hit, I don't know, I think they ended up going with science fiction or something. So a lot of people were seeing the film, and it was having a huge impact. But I think that's off. I think Encounter 2 is still on, but most of the films are off Netflix. PureFlix is putting most of its product, it seems now, behind its own firewall, which is pureflix.com. So, it's probably very good as a business decision if you're a distributor.
Right.
But if you are what you really say you are, and your goal is to spread the gospel, it's it's just hypocrisy.
Right. Hiding it is not the way to.
PureFlix of hypocrisy.
If you're trying to get the word out, hiding it isn't the way to get it out. I completely agree.
Exactly. And it's not just them. There's a couple other sites, and I was invited to pitch for some exclusive content too, and that's what really got me thinking about it as well. And this isn't to say I don't believe in writing secular scripts. I certainly do. Most of what I've written is secular, but my view is if you're going to write a Christian movie, write a Christian movie. Write something that actually that does something, just don't, you get so many. When I first started, there would be like a Christian DVD out every 2 months, 3 months, and now there are so many you can't possibly keep track of them. And most of them are horrible. They're all done for like $7 and, and there's a lot of companies distributing them, but, it's not going well, and a lot of those people are now being sucked up into these exclusive digital rights things. People are calling me and asking me about this all the time.
Yeah,
whether they should do it.
A lot of going back to what you had said about there's a lot of independent films out there, and a lot of them usually end up on Netflix for whatever reason it is, and I cannot understand how these people think their movies turn out well, because coming from a writing standpoint, I will watch the first 20 minutes just to give it time to sink in, and if the acting is bad, or if the portrayal of, let's say for example, a monster is bad in a horror movie, I shut it off right away. And the one thing that I do have to say about Eric's movie, The Revealed, which it's a short movie, but he did get good equipment from the school, and I told him that the trailer itself looks better than any independent film on Netflix. So I
want to put it up to be a feature then.
Yeah. I totally
Netflix just sucks up as much stuff as they can.
Yeah.
But now they've been spending a lot of their money making their own stuff and getting television shows. But they're still picking up a lot of the low budget stuff. And, if you spend, say, $50,000, which is not a huge budget.
Right.
If you made a film that didn't hit the theater, your Netflix is not going to pay you $50,000.
Right.
Maybe 10. Netflix is a really good deal if you're an aggregator. Where if you can get, here's the way distribution works from those companies. There's such a flood of material, they essentially don't have to pay anybody advances anymore.
Okay.
And after a year or so, people are desperate to get their film out at any cost. So basically what a distributor will do is they'll pick up your film for nothing. They'll aggregate it in a deal for Netflix and say 10 films maybe, or 20 films for $50,000,
okay.
Of which, depending on how they do their books, you're going to see none of that money. And even if you did, if there's 20 films and it's $50,000, how much would you actually see? Not enough to care.
Right.
And it's not going to give you any money. It's not going to pay back your investor. But if you're aggregating a bunch of films and putting it on Netflix, then think about it. You're getting product for free from filmmakers.
Yeah.
And you get to make money on it. And you don't have to pay that back because they're not making enough money. A lot of people have been going away from these percentage deals because filmmakers are nervous because it's sort of like they keep putting expenses in so I'll never see it back. And then the distributor say, I'll tell you what, we'll do a flat fee. We'll distribute your film for $20,000. And then anything after that, you get 90 and we get 10. Well, the distributors do that because they know the film will never generate $20,000.
Right.
So they get to keep all of the money that comes in. And it costs them nothing because they just give it to the existing people that work there. And, they may put out some DVDs, but the DVD market has completely tanked. If you can't get your DVD, to have a DVD out is meaningless now.
Right.
Unless it's in stores. So it's really a tough business. And the income that the filmmakers lost from DVD sales has not been replaced by streaming. Maybe in due time. I really think there's an effort by the major corporations to squeeze. Look at music. It's all streaming now too.
Right.
Basically, they don't want you to buy the media anymore. They want you to rent it. And I think that that is the purpose of it. And once everyone's used to not going out and buying a CD of their favorite artist or buying a movie, then they'll be able to up the prices on streaming to compensate for the cost of production.
Right. Yeah.
But for the independent filmmaker, we're screwed.
Yeah. Well, and I honestly have noticed that a lot of the movie rental places just completely going out of business. Blockbuster's gone unless they still have their online thing.
They may have 7 stores or something.
Right, and a lot
they once controlled the business.
Yeah.
That goes how things change. Blockbuster had its awards on TV. Every star showed up.
Yeah.
Because they were afraid. And Blockbuster used to dictate policies to major studios. And then suddenly, in a 3-year time, they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, even the independent, video rental stores, they're gone. I've had at least 2 others other than Blockbuster here in Bismarck, North Dakota, completely just shut down, and it's sad in a sense that you can't just go and rent a movie anymore. You have to look it up digitally and then stream it on your TV, and it's gotten a little more complex, so to speak, unless you go to a Redbox, which those are everywhere now. So
yeah, but they only have so many movies at those.
Well, right, yeah.
And here's the thing. Here's to me what I loved about Blockbuster and the mom and pop stores is I think I'm somewhat aware as a moviegoer of things that are coming out, the big stuff. But the little stuff, I need to see it. You know what I mean? I don't go out, search. I don't go, on Netflix. I just don't say, type in a keyword and try to find a movie. I mean, I miss, but when you're on Blockbuster, they were so intent on having new movies every week, even if they were total garbage, that at least you can look at the box. At least you were seeing the movie, even if you just saw the sideways and you saw the name of it, at least you were exposed to it. And now, people are always talking, I'm going to put this movie out, we're going to do a viral campaign. Really? How many viral campaigns have worked, that have made, huge films? They don't work. It's more work now. And it's same with I like to go to there's one or two good video stores left that have a lot of Blu-rays in them. And I just love to go and look and see what's out. But even they don't have all the titles I want, because sometimes I want to see a movie, I want to buy it. I'll go and check it out. It's not there, and then I'll see. Oh, it has been released. And of course, no one's carrying it. So,
Yeah.
Then I have to buy it online. But I would prefer always to get brick and mortar preference, even if it's a little more expensive. I just like to be able to handle stuff. Before I buy it.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes along the lines of. The e-readers versus an actual book now too. I mean, I have an e-reader, but I prefer reading an actual book because you do get to see the entire book on front and back cover, whereas an e-reader, you have to flip all the way through the entire book to get to the back cover. So
exactly, and because personally, when I like to read The Promise or The Pros and Cons of Talking to God by Sean Murphy. Now, I could read this in Kindle, but it's not as much fun. I mean, when I first got this, the first book I published, and I tell you, when I got the first copies in, you take it out of the box, and you smell it.
Yeah.
And you smell that glue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just so exciting. And it's like records. I don't know if you're old enough to remember records, but
I am.
the record was, they're coming back to a small degree.
Yeah.
But, you get a record, you put it on, and you're sitting there, you're looking at the cover, and then you're looking at the back, you're looking at the liner notes. It doesn't, MP3s just don't do that.
Right, yeah.
It's like that was part of the fun and part of the experience. And I haven't gone to Kindle yet. I did try to do I was going to read my book for, books on tape.
Oh.
And I read through a number of chapters of it. Then I did, because it's a real book about real people, I decided to further obscure some names, which meant all the reading I had done was worthless. So I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me, too, is the smell of old books. And I'm sure a lot of people get grossed out by that, but the very old manuscripts, and you smell it, and it's like that old musty paper and whatever they used for adhesive back in the day, and even the ink smelled much different than it does now too. So I think that we are getting away from the old school way of doing things, and I mean, I'm old enough to appreciate all of the old school things, except for, and 8-tracks kind of came out after records, but I never really listened to 8-tracks. But my dad was I
was a very late adapter to 8-tracks. Someone gave me a stereo. One of my uncles gave me a stereo that had an 8-track player. You couldn't buy 8-tracks new anymore, but if you went to Goodwill, you could get them for 10 cents.
Right, yeah.
So I would go buy these huge stacks of 8-tracks. And then, a long song, and it fades down in the middle as it switches tracks and it fades back up. Not a great format, but it was amusing.
Right, yeah. My dad, to this day, still has records, and we had actually had to, at one point, get him a new record player because the one that he had failed. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting to still see that there are people still trying to hold on to that old school thing. Even my
it's coming back.
Yeah. My fiance's parents still have a VHS player and VHS tapes. For all of you young kids out there was these big tapes that you had to put into a player to actually watch movies.
I'm better than that. I have a basement full of 16-millimeter films. I really only get to watch now. I show them out back in the summer a couple times.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a film writer, I would almost expect you to have the reel-to-reel or what have you.
Well, they are tax deductible.
Well,
and the equipment is tax deductible.
Yeah.
So.
All right, folks.
That's the other thing you got to worry about when you're a freelance writer.
Oh, yeah.
What little you make, you don't want to share with everybody.
Right. All right, folks. I think we'll take our second break here. You're listening to Paratruth Radio. My name is Justin. I've been talking to Sean Paul Murphy, and we will be right back after your paranormal headlines.
And now, Paratruth Radio's paranormal headlines.
How's it going, Parafans? Justin here with your paranormal headlines. And these headlines are from altereddimensions.net. Mummified body of missing captain found frozen in time aboard drifting ship. On February 27, 2016, two fishermen in the Philippines discovered the boat of a German adventurer who had been missing for several years. The boat was floating 40 miles off the coast of the Philippines in the seas of Surigao del Sur province when the fishermen spotted the drifting vessel and boarded it. Inside the boat, the fishermen found the mummified body of Manfred Fritz Bajorat sitting at his desk, radio microphone still in hand. Bajorat had been drifting lifelessly around the world for years. Bajorat's body was found near the radio telephone of his 40-foot yacht, the Sao, as if he was attempting to make a mayday call on the radio. The hot, dry ocean winds and salty air helped preserve his body, while dried body fluids kept the body from moving out of place. It is not clear when Bajorat died or how he met his end, but the way he was sitting seems to indicate the death was unexpected, perhaps from a heart attack. The mast of the boat was broken, and much of the cabin was submerged underwater. A friend of Bajorat told reporters he was a very experienced sailor. I don't believe he would have sailed into a storm. I believe the mast broke after Manfred was already dead. Bajorat was identified by personal items near his body, photographs, and a haunting letter to his wife, Claudia, who died from cancer while Bajorat was at sea. The note read, "We've been together on the same path. Then the power of the demons was stronger than the will to live. You're gone. May your soul find its peace. Your Manfred." Bangladesh tree man. Rare disease causes tree-like branches to grow from his body. In Bangladesh, Abul Bazandra is known as the tree man because of an extremely rare genetic condition known as epidermodysplasia furciformis, or tree man disease, which causes large branch-like tentacles resembling tree branches to grow from the body. In Bazandra's instance, the tree-like branches grow from his fingers, palms, and feet, and are so large and cumbersome he cannot eat, drink, brush his teeth, or take a shower without assistance. In fact, according to Bazandra, about the only thing he can do with his hands is scratch his neck. He relies on his 21-year-old wife, Halima, to feed and take care of him. Bazandra first noticed the growths on his legs in 2006 when he was 15 years old. Doctors tried medicines, but the growths continued to spread across his body. In just 3 years, bark-like growths covered his fingers, forcing him to quit his job as a rickshaw driver. Bazandra tried to cut the growths off himself, but says it was too painful. Initially, I thought that they were harmless, but slowly I lost all my ability to work. There are now dozens of 2 to 3 inch roots in both my hands, and there are some small ones in my legs. As news of his condition spread across the region, he became somewhat of a celebrity, with people coming from far and wide to see him. There are just 2 other people in the world with this condition. In February 2016, Bazandra began his first round of surgery to remove the unusual growths from his body. It is expected to take more than a dozen operations to return his hands and feet to normal. However, doctors at the Dhaka Medical College Hospital say there is no cure for the disease and the warts may reappear. And this has been Justin with your Paranormal Headlines.
This was a segment of Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
Saving starts with internet and wireless from Xfinity. Because when you get Xfinity internet and add mobile, you can save up to $400 a year on wireless. Enjoy fast, reliable internet at home and nationwide 5G on the go, included at no extra cost. Get Xfinity internet and mobile together and ask how to get an eligible 5G phone on us. And for a limited time, $300 back. Don't miss out. Go to Xfinity.com/start saving. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Savings based on optimized pricing. Actual savings may vary.
Dunkin' is putting a whole new spin on pumpkin at Dunkin' with our new pumpkin cream cold brew. Smooth, bold cold brew topped with velvety pumpkin cream cold foam made with cinnamon and nutmeg spices. And there's more pumpkin for you to love, like the delicious fall classic, our pumpkin spice signature latte. Rich espresso topped with whipped cream, caramel drizzle, and cinnamon sugar. That's how we pumpkin at Dunkin'. Sip into the fall season with the $3 medium pumpkin cream cold brew or pumpkin spice signature latte. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusion apply. Valid on pumpkin spice signature latte only in all cold foam cold brew.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio. My name is Justin, and I've been talking to Sean Paul Murphy about his film career. Now, Sean, we are coming to the end of the show here.
Oh, no.
Yeah, as Eric says, it's always the saddest part of the show.
Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Yeah.
I came up with that.
Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience for your final words?
If you're a writer, keep writing, and make it real to you. I was telling you I've been writing scripts for a long time. Never give up. My script, I, John, has been optioned, probably made this year. It's 10 years old. My script, Then the Judgment, 28 years old, was recently optioned as well. So keep revising things. I would tell people, don't make your movie. Work within the system. If you work outside of the system, you start at zero every time. You have to bet the farm every time you roll the dice if you work outside the system. So I tell people, if you're writing movies, work within the system. People will read. Be polite to people. Always take no means no. Expect if you send scripts to people and they don't like it, they are not going to, chances are they are not going to respond to you. Don't call and ask if they liked it. Don't call and ask when can I expect to hear from you. It's people like that prevent people from being read because it scares people. And I do believe, talent will out, and just keep working and always write something new. And I made a huge mistake in my career in the sense once I got an agent. It used to be I didn't even revise a script until I wrote a new script first because I wanted to have that distance from the material. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I got the real agent, I had some scripts that were very well known. But once people really started liking my work, they weren't buying it, but they were liking it. They wanted to read, what do we have? I was in such a hurry to try to meet that need to send stuff out. I was essentially sending out first drafts. Even though technically speaking, I may have gone through it 2 or 3 times, but they weren't the kind of thoughtful rewrites that you need distance to do.
Right.
So I would recommend people, and people are usually too impatient to do this, is to write another script before you look at your first script and send it out. And if you don't have another idea that's good, adapt a book that you don't own. Understand that you will never be able to do it. But if I read, I would just for the sake of practice, I adapted some books. If I wasn't ready to roll with another script immediately, I'd adapt a book. And I never thought, well, suddenly this book belongs to me, or I have a right to sell this book or pitch it to people. The script, I just did it just as an exercise. Because don't get attached to it.
Right.
Don't get attached to any of your scripts. Your career is not going to hinge on one thing. If you have talent, you got to expect to keep working, and always hoping the next one's going to be better. It's not always true, but you got to hope.
Yeah. All right, and then can you tell everybody where they can find you, find your movies, all that, and your book as well?
Okay, well, the first thing I would always say is definitely pick up The Promiser, Pros and Cons of Talking to God. It is my own true story. It is not really about the movie business. It's a story of first love and first faith and how the two became almost fatally intertwined in my life. Basically the subject of the story is, God told me one time, because I would hear the voice of God and still do. That's like this why I like Christian books. Told me, this neighbor girl, and said, "Behold your wife." And guess what? I didn't end up marrying her. So that's what this book is about: how I didn't end up marrying her, why I didn't, and why everything worked out so beautifully. Because I got a great wife in there, right, baby? Yeah, she is. And I would check out my blog. It is Sean Paul Murphyville, one word. Just type that in Google, and it'll come up. I have lots of writing tips, writing advice. Soon I'm actually going to put more the behind-the-scenes nuts and bolts stuff. I'm thinking of putting up the financial statements of some of the films that were made so people can see where the money's coming. And on there you'll find my email. I got my AOL address. It is on my it's on the front of my blog. So anybody wants to contact me, they certainly can. I do read my AOL account at least once a week. So you can tell how old that account is.
Right. I was going to say, I didn't even think anybody used AOL anymore.
Only people who originally used it.
Right. Yeah.
I've had that account since like 1991 or something.
So pretty much when they first got started, right.
Yeah. I kept it. It's usually like when you go to a store and they want your, you don't really want to give them your email address, but they're really insistent. So if I give you my AOL account, usually that means I don't want to talk to you. I gave you a different So, but I do look at it. I do want people to be, and I do talk to people. I generally will not read your script because I don't want to read anything close to anything.
Right.
I might read yours, but generally, because people won't listen to you anyway.
Right.
Most people who won't listen to sound advice, and I didn't always listen to sound advice either. So. Right.
Well, I don't think anybody listens to sound advice just about their regular life, let alone their writing. So,
especially people who are Christians don't, because they feel God wants them to write it. That's the subject of my next blog. God told me to write this, so therefore they're right. Even though it's not even in screenplay format. It's like every third word is misspelled.
Right.
It's going to sell because God told him to write it. So that's what my next blog is about. I've read quite a few scripts that God mandated their writing.
Well, and I'm sure I have no doubt that they may feel that way, or maybe God did tell them to write that. But
maybe He did. It's true.
In the end, if you don't do it the right way, it ain't going to get done. So
my analogy is, God told you to write this script. Well, that's just where you start. You have to do a good job. If God told you to be a doctor, you just wouldn't buy a scalpel and start operating.
Right.
Right. Yeah. You would actually learn. You would realize you have to go to medical school. So I feel that people who think think writing's easy. I know words. The, and, are, big, small. I know lots of words. I could write a script, but usually it's a little more to it than that.
Unfortunately, even people that speak English still don't understand English very well.
Yeah, so I've seen that. And I tell you, I've run across some very talented people who I feel are really going to move along as well, too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. All right, Sean.
It's the crazy ones that drive you crazy.
yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I've been so grateful to have you on, and as soon as we have a chance, we will get you on again to actually talk about the book itself and get Eric in on that conversation as well. So until then,
I also lived in a haunted house. A possessed house for
there you go.
Usually don't talk about that, but
well, when we have you on,
this is Pure Truth,
right? When we have you on for the book, we'll get into the nuts and bolts for that as well. So until next time, have a good night, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks. Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, that was Sean Paul Murphy, author of The Promise, or The Pros and Cons of Talking with God, as well as his illustrious movie writing career, rather. Like I said, during the conversation with him, I do want to get him back on to actually talk about the book itself. But until then, check out his book, The Promise, or The Pros and Cons of Talking with God, as well as just Google Sean Paul Murphy, and you will find his IMDb profile there and all the different movies he's done. Very awesome guy, very awesome guest. So I was very happy to have him on. Next week, we will have Kay Carswell on as a special guest co-host. Undecided on the topic as of yet. So if you guys have any ideas, shoot me an email or comment in the comments below on YouTube or on Spreaker. I do encourage you guys to get on Spreaker and follow us on Spreaker, because then you are notified of the upload to Spreaker as soon as it's active. It does become very hard to post on Facebook now. They have been blocking a lot of people posting in different groups. So definitely get to Spreaker and like the page, so that way you're just automatically notified when a new show is up, as well as subscribe on YouTube. And again, you should get a notification when a new show is up and active. If you listen on iHeartRadio or any other podcasting syndication software, that's fine as well. I just encourage you guys to follow us on there and subscribe to YouTube, just because you are notified in advance that a new show is up and active. Also, find us on Facebook, Pure Truth Radio, and like that page, as well as our PTRN group, and you will be in with a select group of people who listen to both Pure Truth Radio and Thai Girl for God, as well as other podcasters as well. There's other podcasters that post in our forum as well. So until next week, where we will see you same time, same channel, my name is Justin. Have a good night, guys.
If you enjoyed this episode of Pure Truth Radio and you would like to listen to it again, or are interested in listening to any of our past episodes, then you can listen to them on HD at our website, puretruthradio.com.
And you can also find us at Stitcher, Blueberry, TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube.
And of course, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for brand new updates of our show every day.
Saving starts with internet and wireless from Xfinity. Because when you get Xfinity internet and add mobile, you can save up to $400 a year on wireless. Enjoy fast, reliable internet at home and nationwide 5G on the go, included at no extra cost. Get Xfinity internet and mobile together and ask how to get an eligible 5G phone on us. And for a limited time, $300 back. Don't miss out. Go to Xfinity.com/start saving. Call 1-800-XFINITY or visit a store today. Restrictions apply. Savings based on optimized pricing. Actual savings may vary.
Dunkin' is putting a whole new spin on pumpkin at Dunkin' with our new pumpkin cream cold brew. Smooth, bold cold brew topped with velvety pumpkin cream cold foam made with cinnamon and nutmeg spices. And there's more pumpkin for you to love, like the delicious fall classic, our pumpkin spice signature latte. Rich espresso topped with whipped cream, caramel drizzle, and cinnamon sugar. That's how we pumpkin at Dunkin'. Sip into the fall season with the $3 medium pumpkin cream cold brew or pumpkin spice signature latte. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply. Valid on pumpkin spice signature latte only in all cold foam cold brew.